guess what I'm going to talk about today? I wanted to write this book so people could understand more about mental illness and its effects on people. I also wanted to write it in special memory of my father so that I could share with the world the close relationship I had with him. In this book, I talk about my own struggles as a borderline, along with my eldest son's struggles from traumatic brain injury, which he contracted through meningitis when he was only 4 years old. Through it all, the one thing that has remained is love. And I'll leave the link down below. Hi, it's Sandy Wiley. Today, I'm going to do another video on schizophrenia. I know I've done videos on schizophrenia, and I've mentioned this book. Yeah, it's gotten 5-star reviews. I have, let's see, I have family pictures up. That's just a couple of pictures. That's my dad and me dancing on my wedding day. But the two mental illnesses, well, 3, okay, the 3 illnesses that affect me the most are borderline personality disorder, because I have it, schizophrenia disorder, because my dad lived with it all his life, and I lived with it living with my dad, and traumatic brain injury, because my son contacted that at age 4 from pneumococcal meningitis. So let's go right into schizophrenia. What is it? It's a brain disorder that affects less than 1% of the United States population. Less than 1%. When I've read, doing these personality disorders, about the other personality disorders, I always read like 2 or 4%, up to 7%. Less than 1%. When schizophrenia is active, symptoms include delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, trouble thinking, lack of motivation. However, with treatment, most symptoms of schizophrenia will greatly improve. And that was the case with my dad. When my dad was on his medication, you wouldn't even know he had schizophrenia. But the medication, the side effects of the medication were just so grave, it just dulled everything. It was like, he said, like walking around in a fog, and who wants to live life like that? You're really not living. So he often went off of the medication, and then he became psychotic again. There's no cure for schizophrenia. I don't think so. Any cures for a lot of these things. There's no cure for borderline. There's definitely no cure for traumatic brain injury. My son will be the equivalent of a 2-year-old when he's 80, when he's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever, until he dies. My son will always be 2 years old. There is no cure. Experts are unraveling the causes of the disease by studying genetics, behavioral research, yada yada. I'm not going to go into that now. Let's dive right into schizophrenia. Psychosis refers to the set of symptoms characterized by the loss of touch with reality due to a disruption in the way the brain processes information. When someone experiences a psychotic episode, the person's thoughts and perceptions are disturbed, and the individual may have difficulty understanding what is real and what is not. That's the delusions, You can't convince someone who is schizophrenic. And I met a woman, my cousin was also schizophrenic too, my cousin Johnny. I met a woman at the mall when I was working at the mall as security guard, and a lot of the other security guards were frightened as hell of her. They didn't want to go near her. And I knew automatically, even though I don't have a psychology degree, that she was schizophrenic. She was saying that one of the restaurants in the mall was trying to poison her. And I knew from living with my father that this woman was schizophrenic, had schizophrenia, and was out of touch with reality. So the best thing I could do, instead of saying, no, that's not true, they're not trying to poison you, I just went along with it, and I just listened. That's all I did, because you can't convince them of anything, okay? They have lost touch with reality, and you cannot bring them back. Only medication can bring them back, partially, as long as they're taking it. So it's best not to even go there. You're just going to frustrate yourself and frustrate them, and nothing is going to get accomplished. Delusions are fixed false beliefs held despite clear or reasonable evidence that they are not true. Like the paranoid delusions. My father was a paranoid schizophrenic. When a person believes they are being harmed or harassed by another person or groups, and you can't, like I said, to try to reason with them, and you just can't. They're completely out of touch with reality. You cannot reason with them. The only thing you can do is try to say, it's okay, I'll take care of it. I mean, that's what I did with this woman when she was going hysterical in the mall. I said, okay, I'll talk to them. I'll take care of it. I'm not going to say, they're not going to harm you. They're not going to poison you. Yeah. I'll just say, okay, all right, yes, I'll take care of it. I'll go talk to them. That's the only thing you can do. Hallucinations are the experience of hearing and seeing, smelling, tasting, or feeling things that are not there. Like my dad. My dad often, most of the time, heard voices. I can't imagine what that's like. Just imagine having earbuds in your ear of someone talking, and you can't shut it off. You just can't. You can't lower the volume. You can't shut it off. It's always, those earbuds of that person talking are always there inside your ears, and you can't escape it, They are vivid and clear with an impression similar to normal perceptions. Auditory hallucinations, hearing voices, are the most common in schizophrenia and related disorders. Disorganized thinking and speech refer to thoughts and speech that are jumbled and do not make any sense. For example, the person may switch from one topic to another or respond with unrelated topics in conversation. Gee, my husband says I do that all the time. He goes, what are you saying? We were talking about this, and now you got to inform me. He says to me, you have to inform me when you change the conversation to something else. Because I'll go from we're talking about one thing, and I'll jump into talking about something else. All right, disorganized or abnormal motor behavior are movements that can range from childlike silliness to unpredictable agitation, or can manifest as repeated movements without purpose. Like my father would go like this sometimes. My son does these things too. My son will do, my father would go like this. And my son, who's traumatic brain hemorrhage, goes like this. Don't ask me what it means. My son does that, and he has traumatic brain injury. And my father said that when I asked him about this, he said when he was a little boy, he had scarlet fever, and he was in the hospital in solitary confinement. No one could be near him. And he remembered the nurse taking his temperature, would shake that's when they had the mercury, would shake the thermometer down. So I guess that was a memory from his childhood. You got to ask. People are afraid of these people that, they're human. They're just like, mental illness, it's not a crime. They're not murderers. I mean, I guess some of them can be. But my father wasn't a murderer. He was a good man. He was a caring man. He was a good father. The best father he could be, carrying such a severe mental illness as schizophrenia. My father never yelled at me, never raised his voice. My father never hit me, never laid a hand on me. My mother beat me up to a pulp. My father never laid a hand on me, never swore at me, never belittled me, never raised his voice to me, always listened to me, listened with care, not just, pretend to listen like, yeah, yeah, You know how some people, when you're talking, they're pretending to listen to you and they're like, yeah, yeah. Like you can tell. They're just like, whatever you're saying is like, they're not paying attention. But my dad, he did. So, I just want to abolish this nonsense that people who have mental illness, are evil people, are people to be afraid of, are bad people, or people that don't fit into society. There's a lot of people there, good people, kind people who are battling things. You wouldn't say this to a cancer patient. You wouldn't be afraid or fear or think evil of a cancer patient. Then why do a lot of people, I'm not blaming you in particular, but a lot of people do of people with mental illness. And I'm here to set the record straight that it's not right. It's unjust to, be prejudiced against someone or think things that aren't true because they have mental illness. Let's see. Negative symptoms refer to what is abnormally lacking or absent in the person with a psychotic disorder. Examples include impaired emotional expression, decreased speech output, reduced desire to have social contact or to engage in daily activities, and decreased experience of pleasure. And that's what it says there about. But I wanted to add my own, personal take on schizophrenia. I didn't even know my father had schizophrenia because no one in my family was honest with me. All they said was, your father's not right. What does that mean? That's like a blanket statement. I could say that about anyone. They're not right, whatever that means, And like when I had girlfriends up, they never knew. I bet a lot of them don't even know. I bet if anyone of my friends are watching this channel, right, they'd say, what is she talking about? Her father had schizophrenia. She must be out of her mind. She must be on drugs, or she must be, pretty sick herself. Because I didn't know he had schizophrenia. I never told anyone. I married my husband and I didn't even tell him. Because I didn't know. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what schizophrenia was. I didn't know what it was called. All I knew was my father wasn't right. That's all I knew. That was it. And that's another thing. People need to be educated. You don't be afraid to teach your children about mental illness, right? You wouldn't be afraid to tell your children if you had cancer, right? Then why are you afraid to tell them about a mental illness? Like, I have borderline personality disorder. My father was schizophrenic. My son has traumatic brain injury. Would you be afraid to say to someone, I have cancer? I have leukemia? See? We got to get rid of the stigma. So that's the one thing. I mean, that's why I wrote this book too. You gotta get rid. That's the on the back there. You gotta get rid of the stigma of mental illness. People gotta be able to come on, and we gotta talk more openly about this because we gotta debunk all the myths that surround this. I mean, my father grew up. His mother, I wrote this all in here. You just have to read it. His mother already had a child out of wedlock. Okay, so he has a brother floating around somewhere. It was a boy. Back in those days, that you don't do that. Abortion's unheard of back in those days. Having a baby out of wedlock, that's unheard of. So they took the baby away from his mother. I don't know what happened to the baby, but obviously she gave birth and they took it, and I think they might have even told her that the baby died. Whatever, it was shamed. Hide the pregnancy. As soon as the baby is born, take it away. Who knows what happened to him? And that was the end of it. And then she married my father's father, my grandfather, he already had a house full of kids from his first wife, who was put in a mental institution. She died in a mental institution. I don't know what her mental illness was. No idea. Everyone in that family, all his half siblings, were something upstairs wasn't right. I know that his half sister Helen had electric shock treatment for depression, and it left her like almost like in a vegetable state. Not as bad as my son. I mean, she could still. What did she do for a living? She cleaned toilets. Well, my son can't do that. She cleaned homes. You know, she was like a maid. That's what she did. But she was very simple. But she could work, right? My son can't work. My son can't clean homes, you know, so she was much higher functioning than my son. But it's sad. It's very sad. But so there was a lot of mental illness, and also they treated my father very, very poorly, because they didn't like their father marrying another woman, and they thought that, you know, and of course my father was a product of that. Their mother was in a mental hospital. Their father married another woman, my grandmother, my father's mother. They didn't like her. They didn't like him. So he grew up, and they all had psychological issues. So they all grew up. And of course, my father grew up in that kind of environment. I don't know if that, you know, contributed to the schizophrenia. But I do believe it's genetics and environmental. I do believe it's both of those that go into someone becoming, having a mental illness. It's definitely biological, I think. But I also can be environmental too. But there's cases on both sides. But anyway, I do want to end it. I said I wasn't going to do another personality disorder. I want to end it here. And I just want to say that I have beautiful memories of my dad. I love my dad very much. He was a very kind man, very loving man. He never hurt me. He was in a lot of mental anguish and pain, but he never took that out on me. He was in McLean's Hospital in Belmont, but James Taylor was there too. And yeah, but just like with my son, you know, some beautiful people that, you know, are unfortunately carry an illness. And they're still very loving, and they deserve respect. So I'll leave you with that. Until next time.